With society's endless expectations upon you and mental health and anxiety issues on the rise, finding your true authentic self can be challenging. Being your true self is a key and never a mistake because you are not a mistake. You are you, unapologetically. Join Dr. Kim R. Grimes as she creates a safe space and initiates influential conversations about you being you. Listen to discussions featuring step-by-step guides, techniques, and principles that you can sink your teeth into about uncovering your greatness, triggering a mindset shift, and living beyond your limiting beliefs. The time to connect with who you were created to be and fall madly, did I say madly, in love with you starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Kim R. Grimes.
Hey everyone! Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back to You Are You Unapologetically. You all know who I am, but just in case you don't, just in case this is your first episode that you're listening to, I am your host, Dr. Kim R. Grimes. And today we're diving into a topic that's deeply personal, often misunderstood, but incredibly important. Trauma. Now, before you hit the pause thinking, oh no, this episode's not for me, or this is going to be too heavy, let me assure you, this is going to be a real conversation. And I mean real conversation. No clinical jargons, no expert lectures. We are just real people sharing real stories about how trauma can affect us and what it means when we feel lost in life. So, how about we start with a simple definition? Trauma isn't just about huge life altering events. It's also about the small but significant experiences that leave a mark on us emotionally, mentally, or even physically. Trauma can look like growing up feeling unseen, right? Experience rejection, or even a series of smaller moments that chip away at your confidence. Here's why I want to have this conversation. Here's why. So many of us, you, me, right? When I say us, we walk around carrying unaddressed trauma, not realizing how much it affects our lives, our relationships, our choices we make, and even how we see ourselves. Trauma can impact that. See, it's not enough that as human beings, we struggle with going inward, or we struggle with our inner self. But trauma keeps us from facing ourselves. True that. True that. So today I'm joined by an amazing guest, an amazing everyday woman like you and me. We're going to share our personal journeys with trauma and what helped us navigate those feelings of being lost. Now, before we get started, I just need to say this isn't about fixing anyone. That's not it. It's not about finding all the answers either. What is it about? It is about being vulnerable, being open, being honest, and maybe, just maybe, finding a little clarity together. So let's get into it. Okay? Oh my goodness, you guys. Oh my goodness. I can't wait to share with you our next guest. Okay, here we go. So our Our guest today is an amazing person. She is a survivor, to say the least. She is an entrepreneur, cancer advocate, and the visionary behind Trying Not to Die, Live. With a background in communications, marketing, and public relations, she navigated diverse roles from spearheading communication strategies for large corporations, small companies, and nonprofit organizations to founding her own marketing agency over 20 years ago. Diagnosed with stage 4 triple positive breast cancer in 2015, basal cell carcinoma in 2021, and thyroid cancer in 2023. She founded Trying Not to Die, Live in 2022. As a dynamic advocate and speaker, she passionately champions resilience, empowerment, and community building amid adversity, inspiring others to navigate the complexity of cancer with courage and power. Please, 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 please help me to welcome Deb Krier to Yay You. Welcome, 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 welcome. It is a pleasure for you to be here with us. Thank you so much for being so amazing and being a passionate champion for resilience, empowerment, courage, grit, power, and inspiring others. So thank you, Deb, for being here. I know your plate is full and your schedule's very busy, so I'm honored. I'm really honored that you said yes to being a guest. Now, usually I ask my guests to share how we met, but this is literally our first time meeting one another. And it's all good and it's okay. So with that, you can actually share how we were connected.
I love it. I love it. Well, first of all, I'm the one who is honored to be on your fabulous podcast. And okay, seriously, I need some of your energy. You are just absolutely fantastic. And we're going to have such a great chat. We were introduced by the lovely, the talented Noemi. She is someone that I work with who has been promoting me to be a guest on podcasts, and she is very selective because she's very picky and she only picks the very best. And she did. I know we're going to have so much fun.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again. So how about we just jump into our discussion? How about we do that?
We can jump away.
Yes, jump in. Yeah. So when you hear the word trauma, what comes to mind for you? And let me put a little pause in there. Did you always recognize certain moments in your life as traumatic?
You know, trauma to me is kind of a fear thing, right? Where your gut goes, ew, ah. It might the fight or flight thing might make you say, run away, danger, danger. And I think I've always recognized that. My dad, now I grew up in Colorado, in the mountains of Colorado. And so my dad worked out with wildlife. That was what he did. He was a wildlife conservation manager. And so I got to see a lot of that firsthand with what fight or flight would be, things like that. And it's always interesting, do we have the strength to stay? Are we, sometimes it's smarter to run away, and all of those things. But trauma is something that is obviously different for every single person. And how we react to it is different, and I think I've gotten better at it, because this has been quite a bumpy ride. But at the same point, there are times where I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, we have those moments. And I do agree, like when you said it's a trauma, it impacts us uniquely, differently. And And it depends on how we react to it.
Right.
How we manage it. And so I appreciate that. So let me ask you this. So there are a lot of people who describe feeling like lost or stuck after experiencing trauma. And I want to emphasize again that we're not talking about something huge, although, trauma is trauma at the end of the day. But we're also talking about the small ones. So a lot of people describe feeling lost or stuck after they experience trauma. And knowing your journey, I know you felt that way. But what was it like for you?
Well, I think we do kind of feel lost and stuck because our first instinct, I think, is to protect ourselves and to go into this, I don't want to deal with it mode. And many times we stay there, so we stay stuck, but we can't, right? We have to deal with it. When I was first diagnosed, I was pissed. I literally told my doctor, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. And it was, and she looked at me like, you realize you don't get a vote in this. But it really was something that was so interesting because I think part of the stuck and the lost is we also don't want to deal with it. We want to ignore it and hope it goes away.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that doesn't happen. Now, sometimes clearly when there are other types of trauma, we can just kind of hunker down, as they say here in Georgia, and things will pass. But doesn't always happen that way. And we've got to, we can't be the turtle. We got to put our heads out and we got to see what's going on. And then we have to deal with it.
Right. And so for you, I like when you said, when you were diagnosed, you were mad, like you just got angry with it. And so I can relate to, us having, just being angry about something that, that happened. And you're like, and feeling stuck in it because, the first thing you think is like, what can I do about it? And as if you had a choice to raise your hand and say, okay, I want to play with
I'll check that box.
Exactly. So I know I get what you're saying. So sometimes trauma doesn't hit us all at once.
No.
And knowing what you went through, I know that it shows up in small ways. So during your journey, have you noticed like patterns, or have you noticed a habit in your life that you think might be connected to past trauma?
Yeah, I think that definitely the ignore it and it will go away, is something that, but, and I don't know, there are times where I'm just ready. I'm going to leap in, I'm going to deal with it. But in many cases, it's like, no, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm just going to ignore it. Unfortunately, I can't. Right. And then that's where it gets frustrating.
Yeah.
So, like when I have to rest, when because I will hit some pain levels that it's like, nope, stopping for the day. Then you just get really annoyed. And the thing that I've also discovered is, it's like you said, trauma can be little things. I almost died 3 times. Okay,
right.
Whatever.
Right.
But
glad that you're still here. Yay. But
yeah. Thank you. Yes. I remember thinking I get a vote, but it's sometimes it really is something little, like I can't go for a walk today and I want to go for a walk, and then I just fall apart. Yeah. Or I'll see something on TV that will just all of a sudden hit me in a way where I get all weepy, and I am not a weepy person. And so you never know with trauma where it's going to come up. And like I said, some of the stuff that's big, I'm like, right, whatever. Like when they told me that I had cancer number 3,
right.
My doctor called. And it's never good when the doctor calls, And
right.
I saw her on the caller ID, and she said, "Yeah, it is papillary thyroid cancer was its official name." And I said, "Oh, bad words that I can't say to you." And she laughed and she said, That's why you'll get through this just fine. But yeah, I was annoyed. And again, it was like, but yeah, little things will set me off, where big things, I'm like, whatever.
Oh, okay. And what I hear you saying as well is that the diagnosis was one traumatic experience, but then you also, in coping through all three diagnoses, there were small traumatic moments that, such as you're not being able to go out for a walk when you want to, right? That's a traumatic moment, a small moment. Also thinking of the impact that the small traumatic moments have not only on you, but on your family. So can you share, how did that, like, the trauma impact your family? They weren't diagnosed, but you were, but yet they went through trauma. And so we're talking about, as we go through, life, there's unaddressed trauma. And so I want to make sure, I want to ask, did they, I'm quite sure they did. What was the experience of the traumatic experience that they experienced that?
Right.
And then what impact did it have, on them?
Well, in many ways, I think it's harder because they want to fix it and they can't fix it. And so we don't have children. So it's me and my husband and then my mother. Okay. And, so I had a complication from my very first chemo treatment that was the first time I almost died. I mean, the doctors argued over how fast I would die that day. They were giving me hours. Okay. And so my husband we live in Atlanta and my mother at that point lived in Kansas. He had to call and tell her, you need to get out here. Wow. And you're probably not going to get here fast enough. Yeah. And I can't imagine as a parent having to deal with that. Right. And so her way of dealing with trauma is she's in charge. I have a college friend who called her the general, and that really, and my mother never quite understood that was not a compliment. But yeah, I mean, she was going to fix it, and what she couldn't fix, she was going to just, knock into shape. Yeah. And I think that is the way that a lot of times we deal with stuff. One of the other things that happened that kind of surprised me was some people couldn't deal with it. Yeah. I had friends who dropped off the face of the earth, people that I thought would be some of my biggest supporters. Yeah. Nope. And others who needed to take a beat. My best friend lives in Colorado and I had texted her and didn't get a response. And then of course I was like, and all sorts of things. And she finally responded and she said, I'm having trouble dealing with this. Give me a little bit. Yeah. And then she's come out twice to Atlanta, all sorts of things. And I think the thing with trauma is we have to feel it. We have to acknowledge it and give ourselves the grace to get through it and give others the grace to get through it. Oh. Did I get annoyed when my mother was in charge? Yes. And then it was pick your battles, right? Okay, could she do that? Yeah, that was okay. When she started rearranging my kitchen, it was like, nope, it's time for you to go home. And was that traumatic? I don't know.
Right. The kitchen still looks the way that you want it to look. So it have a great impact on you. Yep. No, I totally get it. And I appreciate how you shared with trauma, rather big or small. Mm-hmm. We have to acknowledge it. We have to, and what I want to say is receive it. Like once it, embrace it. And then, we have to give ourselves grace and give others grace. I think both of those, the last two is kind of tough because we're our worst critics. So we are always beating ourselves up. So it may be a little easier to give someone else grace, but it tends to be a little harder to give ourselves grace because I'm quite sure there were a lot of questions. And I know with trauma, no matter how big, how small, there are questions. So if you can just share, what was a question that, popped in your head? What were you asking yourself? What were you saying to yourself? How did you treat yourself?
Yeah, I think probably one of the first questions, and this happens with many people who are diagnosed with any type of serious illness, why me? Right? And, and what did I do to cause this? And it's very much like dealing with grief, right? Then we start bargaining. Hey, God, if you keep me alive, I promise I'll go to church every Sunday, right? Or I will do better on my exercising and my dieting. All of those things play into it. But I think the other thing is it's as you said, we absolutely have to feel it at whatever level it is. Because when we don't, then it just kind of builds, right? And the tiny little thing is what makes you go kaflooey, and so I'm still in active treatment. I go in every 21 days. Okay. So I'm always having things. Whatever the trauma is, we have to feel it, otherwise it will build up and it will explode.
Yeah.
And it is ongoing. It's not that you have one thing that happens.
Right.
You have one thing, and then you have another thing, and then you have another thing. And the thing is, you just keep going.
Right. And I think that, the big trauma, if it's like you're speaking about, cancer, or a loss of a loved one, or a car accident, or we can focus on that. But then there are subtle impacts, traumas from that, which I spoke about before, that we tend not to pay attention to because the big trauma it has a majority of our focus. And as you shared about your mother, as you shared about your husband, I'm just thinking, just your husband having to manage all of that and how that traumatized him. Right. And even having to call your mother to say what he said. And so I know that healing helps, right? We all want to heal, and even in small ways. So what has helped you start healing? And was it people? Is it habits? Was it moments? What was it that made a difference for you?
It was my community. The people who I am around. I tell people, I'm a warrior. You call me a patient and I get really annoyed. I'm a warrior. And I know not everybody likes that term, but the thing is, warriors are never alone. We always have our tribes. And so who is it that we're bringing in that's going to help us through this process? And it's your religious leaders, it's your medical people, it is your caregivers. All of those people are part of your tribe. Yeah. And those are the people who help you get through it. I have a private Facebook group that I have just to kind of update people with my personal stuff. And every time I'm having something that's going on, I know that there are people who are praying for me, sending healing thoughts, all of those things. And so I'm never alone. And I think that's the thing that I always remember is, and I remember one time I was going in for one of my surgeries because I've had a whole bunch, and was going in. And I remember thinking, I can't die. They'll all be mad at me.
Okay. That was good.
It's kind of a different accountability, right?
Exactly. But, I'm quite sure they still loving you to this day, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask you, if there was someone right now that's listening that is stuck in their trauma or and feel lost in life, right? Because of their trauma, what would you say to them? What would you say to them?
The first is it's okay. It is okay to feel what you are feeling.
Okay.
Because I think that's one of the things we feel guilty, all that. No, it's okay to feel what you are feeling and then to think, how can I make it better? And take baby steps. This is not, I'm going to fix it all right away. It's, Okay, maybe I don't even want to leave my house any longer. Okay, walk to the mailbox. Take a walk around the block.
Yeah.
Call a friend, do whatever, take baby steps. And again, surround yourself with people, people who are going to support you, because there are some that aren't. And so find those people like Dr. Kim. Oh my gosh, just her energy alone would be something that would uplift everyone. But find those people in your lives and be honest with them and tell them, I need your help.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, what is that one thing that our listeners can take away from this conversation that we're having about the root cause of trauma and why you feel lost in life? What is that one thing that they should take away from what we're talking about?
It's normal. It's going to happen. I think when we are a little bit too much Pollyanna, things rise up and bite us. But we can also control our reaction to things and what we're putting ourselves through. If you get upset at watching everything that's going on in the news, then turn the news off. Stop doom scrolling in Facebook. Take those little steps. But what you're going through is perfectly normal and everybody feels it.
And you're not alone is what I hear you saying.
Yep.
So Deb Krier, thank you so much. But now before we sum all this up, how can our listeners connect directly with you?
The easy way is to just go to the website, which is www.tryingnottoDie.live, Live. And you'll find on there, we do have a Facebook group for Trying Not to Die.live. You'll find my contact information on there too. I'm also on the socials. You can find me as Deb Krier. I'm the only redhead Deb Krier. So it's pretty easy to find me. I think there's only 3 in the whole world. But yeah, you find my little picture and that's me.
Awesome. So Deb, it has been a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for the very first time. So thank you so very much for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing you. Your vulnerability is going to help so many people who are listening to this episode today. And for that, we are grateful and we are humbled. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Deb, for being here. We truly, truly appreciate you guys. And so with that being said, I just want to say bye-bye for you. Bye-bye to you, Deb, as we go into another section or segment of this podcast. So for you guys who are waiting for the next segment, let's take a short little break and I'll be back to close out the segment on our conversation about the root cause of trauma and why you feel lost in life. All right, I'll be back. So I'm back, and big thanks and a big shout out of love to Deb Krier. Thank you again and again and again. So I want to close out this episode by personally sharing my experience with trauma, allowing me to share my vulnerability and how I began to understand trauma on a personal level. You guys know that I've experienced a major trauma with the loss of my first husband. I spoke about it in my first episode. So if you haven't heard that, go back and you'll get all the details. What I did not realize after the death of my first husband was that the small traumas that occurred while I was on the journey, something so small as I was impacted traumatically when I had to thinking about telling my family, right, of what had just happened and just dealing with that. But here's another one. I lost myself. I did not know who I was. And at that time, it was so traumatic for me. It was so traumatic. I remember sharing with you guys that my identity was wrapped up in my late husband. It was. And I lost me. I lost me. I lost everything about me because that was my focus. I was focused on that big, huge, traumatic experience. And those small experiences hit me hard as well. And so I felt lost. And that was a moment of realization for me. It took a minute. It wasn't like overnight. It was like, well, who am I? And why can't I? Why do I feel lost? Why do I feel the way that I'm feeling? But not knowing who I am or who I was then, because I'm clear on who I am now. I didn't know that it was an emotional side of feeling lost. I did not know that. And the trauma of feeling lost left me feeling a lot of uncertainty about my life. I wasn't sure. I lost confidence. I was afraid. All of those things occur because of the small traumatic experience that we have. I did not know who I was anymore. And so to rebuild my sense of self, let me just say that did not occur overnight. It took some time. It took some time, and I had to be intentional to rebuild my sense of self. And one of the things that I did, our guest spoke about it as well earlier, and she says surround yourself with people who love you, right? And that's what I did. People, not only do they love me, they encouraged me, they supported me. Now, Deb also made a point. Now, everybody, that's not everybody. And there are going to be some people that you're going to think that will be there and they're not. But you also have to give those people grace, right? Because they too are dealing with the traumatic or the trauma that comes when we have traumatic experiences. It impacts our loved ones. It does. And the people that are around us. So I want to say that this was one of the first things that I did. And this is when I can say the rebuilding of the sense of myself. I want to say that's when it started, because people start seeing in me things that I couldn't see, especially, my current husband. Like, he saw so much in me and I was so clueless to it, right? But that, I want to say, that is when my rebuilding of the sense of myself began, or it started. And let me say, it's not always about healing, right? So that's why I wanted to say, like, my healing began, but it's not always about healing in one big moment. Yes, I did heal from that, but I also had to learn how to navigate it. I had to learn how to navigate the small traumatic experiences into my day-to-day life. I reminded myself, I had to remind myself every day who I am. And I did at first in a thought, right? I am amazing. I am strong, right? I have tenacity. And first I had to, well, let me say this. First I had to write some of these things down. I'm not going to lie to you. Because when I said I had to think of it in thought, that's when, and I said, but I had to write them down. So I had to think about these things. And then what I did is I spoke to myself. I said these things to myself. I said them in my head, and then I said them out loud. I said them out loud. Then I actually took a step further and I said it in front of a mirror. I needed to hear myself say these things while looking myself in my eyes. See, that's when the confidence came. That's when I was able to really believe what I was hearing myself say. Not only did I hear, but I was listening to what I was saying. And doing this daily, it helped me It helped me to feel more grounded. It helped me to feel more real about me. And it helped me to accept me as I was on this journey. But please note this. I did not do this alone. I didn't do it alone. I said before, I needed a support system of my friends, family, even in the medical community. And so another thing that, and they helped me tremendously. They really did. I also started journaling, right? As I was writing down these thoughts. Yes. And when the time came, I went and I seeked out therapy. I saw a therapist, and that was important. It was so important. And so I want to say the combination of therapy, journaling, and a support system, all of these things together was wonderful for me, and it worked for me because I say this all the time, right? I am a Jesus follower, and therefore speaking to God, sitting in his presence and allowing him to love on me was my most helpful resource. I'm going to say that again because, like I said, I'm a Jesus follower. So when I took the time out and I sat and I talked to God, some of you call it prayer, but I talk to God as just like I'm talking here on this podcast, as if he's standing or sitting right here with me. And sitting in his presence, sometimes I'm just quiet, sitting in his presence. Sometimes I'm humming. Sometimes I'm just there and I'm just thinking of him and allowing him to love on me. That was my most helpful resource. Because so many of us walk around carrying unaddressed trauma, not realizing how much it affects our lives. It affects our relationship. It affects our choices, the choices that we make. So I want to encourage you to address the small, the big one, the big traumas, they're there. And you're going to deal with them. But I also want you to address the small but significant experiences that have left a mark on you emotionally, mentally, or even physically. We have to address them. Do not allow them to go unaddressed. See, in life, we all have trauma. We all experience it. Not one of us are exempt from it. And so know that you are not alone, that the situation will pass. You will heal. You will get better. But you don't want to sit in it and do nothing. You don't want your small unaddressed traumas, it's rejection or feeling lost or feeling uncertain or confused. You don't want to do nothing. So after acknowledging your trauma, Deb said to feel it, right? Feel it and accept it, right? After you do that, make a decision. Make a decision not to allow the trauma, regardless of how big it is or how small it may be, to consume you. Know that you are valuable. You are very important. You matter. And you are enough. So let's be that trauma. Let it be that. So let it be for trauma. Let's not allow it to consume us. Trauma doesn't look like, or doesn't always look like, what we see in a movie. It can be quiet, subtle, and deeply personal. Again, whether your trauma is big or small, it matters. And more importantly, like I said before, you matter. You are valuable and you are important. So feeling lost is not a sign of failure. having a traumatic experience is not failure. It is often a sign that you're growing, healing, or figuring out what truly matters to you. So when you feel lost, don't feel like you're a failure. Recognize that you're growing and healing at the same time, and you're getting clarity around what matters to you. Healing isn't linear, and there are no one size fit all solutions for it. There's not for trauma at all. But every step you take, and I mean every step you take, no matter how small, how large, no matter, even like I said, if there are micro baby steps, those steps count, period. They count. So if something from today's episode resonates with you, please take a moment to sit with it. Don't just listen, just sit with it. Write it down, journal about it, or share this episode with a friend. Talk about it. Someone else may need it that you know may need to hear what we're talking about here. And remember, healing doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. It happens in the little choices that we make each and every day. The little choices that I make every day. The little choices that you make every day. That's when healing happens. With society's rigid expectations and endless opinions, self-expression and self-appreciation can feel challenging and daunting. Most of the time, this pushes you to dumb down, hide, right? Who you really are. And you'll just go with the flow. That's not what we're here. That's not what we are about here. You are you unapologetically. It means being true to how you were created and not allowing other people's opinions to affect how you show up in life. I say this at the end of every episode. People are going to talk. People are going to talk, so let them talk. You have no time to be intimidated by the presence of others and think so little of yourself. Stop it. Stop it. When you show up without pretense and hesitation, the world can't dull your glamour. And most importantly, you will be inspired to shine your light. Shine your light, share your light, and help others to tap into their own brilliance. So let's put an end to disparaging mindsets and begin to own our authentic self. Join me here for another episode in this safe space where I will initiate influential conversations about being you. That's what I'm here for, right? Because you are you unapologetically, and no one is better at being you. Absolutely no one. So I want to say thank you for joining me on my podcast. Yay, you. Keep showing up for yourself. Keep asking hard questions. And most importantly, keep being you. Because you are more than enough. Until next time, take care. Ciao, ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode. May this transformational discussion shift your mindset so you can live in possibility, so you can step higher in your greatness and stand bolder in your brilliance. Do not wait another minute. Start now to uncover your greatness and begin to fall madly, did I say madly, in love with you. The journey to unleashing and owning your true self doesn't end here. Be sure to subscribe to the show at kimrgrimes.com. Leave a rating and gear up for more conversations like this one. See you on the next episode. And remember, you are not a mistake. You are you, unapologetically.